back to Invest Global. Today we're discussing the semiconductor chip shortage and how it's affecting a massive companies. Certain are innovating, others are just cutting back in general, like Toyota. Now, I first covered this back when I was in Istanbul, Turkey. In this video, I will have this link down below in the description. I go into a bit more detail on the supply chain aspect of things, but basically what you want to understand here is there's a constant demand for semiconductor chips, both in cars, a lot of the modern technology, and even things like, PlayStation 5s, Xboxes, things like this that are in constant demand. But again, that supply is fixed. And the interesting thing about the supply is it's actually fixed in a lot of kind of unstable economies like South Korea and Taiwan. So specifically, Taiwan produces a very, very large amount of semiconductor chips, and over the past year, obviously there has been a lot of problems in the supply chain getting these chips out and just the overall manufacturing of these chips. Now, we'll be focusing on this article in today's video. So again, Toyota is planning to cut global production by 40%. So this is a very interesting trend that you want to pay attention to. Similar with Samsung with the I think it's like the PS5. I personally don't own any of these, but it's a very interesting trend, right? I think a lot of people are going to want these machines, whether it's gaming product or a car. And you see kind of the second order consequences, right? So the half-life of this kind of catalyst in the market affecting, let's say, the used car markets, right? Because when there's this kind of this hinge in supply with new cars, right? New car manufacturing, which was the focus of this previous video, that kind of puts much more demand on used cars. So people are going much more into the used car market. Certain rental car fleets are actually selling out their fleets, and it's making it not only harder on the used car market, so prices are going up there, but in just getting the rental for daily prices, that is skyrocketed, especially in the U.S. Certain places that I've been, used cars, it's very, very easy to get rentals, but especially in Europe and Turkey specifically, I got some nice rentals there. So Toyota is to slash the worldwide vehicle production to 40% in September because of this global microchip shortage. Now, I just want to contrast this real quick with what they talk about here at the end of the article, which what I love about Tesla. Like them or hate them, they're innovative, and that's what Elon's all about. So they say they're using alternative chips and they're rewriting software, right? So if basically these traditional companies like Toyota, like GMC, all these companies basically are going, this is a problem, this is a roadblock, we're just going to halt and then hopefully move forward after that. But Tesla's saying, we're going to innovate around this, we're going to find a way out of it and really kind of work our way out of this situation so we don't have to cut the supply of new cars. So the world's biggest car maker has planned to make almost 900,000 cars next month, but now reduced it to 540,000 vehicles. Volkswagen, the world's second biggest car producer, has warned that it may also be forced to cut output further. The COVID pandemic boosted demand for appliances that use chips such as phones, TVs, and video game consoles. So not only is this happening with semiconductor chips, but there's certain commodities that are very similar, and I'll probably be covering this more in future episodes. I've talked a lot about lithium, I've talked a lot about silver, I've talked about uranium, copper's quite interesting, cobalt. There's a lot of interesting commodities, and with this, what can you do about it, right? So you can identify this macro trend, but the main thing you want to look for is kind of a gap in the market, maybe a bit of a perception gap. So if people don't think uranium's a good player, they don't understand what's going on with copper, that's where there is some opportunity. But if everyone understands, like, hey, buy Amazon stock or buy Apple stock, there's really no perception gap, right? So it's a bit different with this because people are seeing this trend, but they don't necessarily know where to invest in. In my personal opinion, the place to invest in is either one, companies that are making alternatives to semiconductor chips, or two, really the best semiconductor chip stocks. Now, I can talk about this in another video if you guys are interested in that. Let me know in the comment section, but we'll continue on here. On Thursday, German firm Volkswagen, which cut output earlier in the year, told Reuters, "We currently expect supply of chips in the third quarter to be very volatile and tight. We can't rule out further changes in productions." Toyota's other rivals, including General Motors, Ford, Nissan, Daimler, BMW, and Renault, have already scaled back production in the face of the global chip shortage. Again, I talked about that in this video. It'll be down below in the description. Until now, Toyota has managed to avoid doing the same, with the exception of extending summer shutdowns by a week in France and Czech Republic and Turkey. New cars often include dozens of microchips, but Toyota is benefiting from having a larger stockpile of chips. So they have the stockpile, but it's running out, right? They're not replenishing the reserves. And this is something where if you can if you can find that metric on companies' balance sheets of their reserve of semiconductor chips, which is probably a bit harder to find, right? That can be an interesting play if you dig a lot deeper and go kind of beyond the surface level analysis that most people do in this market. As part of a revamp to its business and continuity plan developed in the wake of the Fukushima earthquake and tsunami a decade ago, the decision to reduce output has now been perpetrated by the resurgence of coronavirus cases across Asia hitting supplies. So similar, I recently made a video on kind of this problem with the supply chain with lumber. So with lumber, you saw essentially price went up with the actual commodity lumber, but a lot of people said, okay, so I'll invest in timber stock, right? So in the supply chain, you have timber, then you have the sawmills, then you have lumber, and that's a simplified version of it. But the problem wasn't necessarily in timber, so timber didn't blow up in price. The problem was the actual sawmills, right? So the sawmills, they had all these regulations. Think about working at a hot sawmill, sawdust everywhere, and you have to wear one of those N95 masks. It's pretty crazy. So people didn't want to come to work. There was a lot of kind of furloughs, layoffs, things like this. So the lumber increase in supply wasn't quite there, and the demand was surging because you have all these kind of cheap interest rates on building houses, right? So interesting as far as that goes. Again, identifying supply chain, kind of, I guess, you could say inefficiencies in the market. So the decision to reduce, we talked about that. The company will make some cuts in August as it plans Japan and elsewhere. The bulk of the cuts, 360,000, will come in September and affect factories in Asia and the U.S. In the United Kingdom, Toyota has car plants in Burniston and in Derbyshire. I apologize if I butcher those names. And an engine plant in Deeside. In the statement, they said, Toyota is going at great lengths to minimize the impact of the semiconductor shortage that is globally impacting the automotive industry. In terms of the UK production operations, we are currently operating as planned at both plants. The aim for Toyota as a whole is to make up for any lost volume by the end of 2021. So with the wide range of businesses from car makers to small appliances that have been hit with the chip shortage, again, this is something that's very, very interesting. You're kind of identifying this a bit early, so maybe companies are going to raise their prices quite a lot because of this. Think about the next iPhone, for example. Apple expects the impact of the shortage to worsen to extend to iPhone production. So I'm assuming Apple is probably going to innovate just like a Tesla is, but some of these older school companies like Sony, like Renault, like Toyota, like GM, who knows exactly what they're going to do, right? So these are kind of some trends to look at. Issue started to emerge last year when Apple had to stagger the release of its iPhones, while the latest Xbox and PlayStation consoles failed to meet the demand. Since then, one technology company has warned of the effects. And last month, the boss of chipmaker Intel, Pat Gesslinger, said the worst of the global chip shortages has yet to come. Mr. Gesslinger predicted the shortage would get worse in the second half of the year, and it would be a year or two before supplies return to normal. The shortage prompted U.S. President Joe Biden to sign an executive order to address the issue. He vowed to seek $37 billion in funding for legislation. It's funny because it's like trillion here, trillion there. Who notices a billion, right? So it's crazy what's going on. He vowed to seek $37 billion in funding for legislation to increase chip manufacturing in the United States. Shares in Toyota fell by 4.4% on Thursday, their biggest daily drop since December of 2018. So that is all for today's video. I'm curious what you guys think about this, if you have any insights on different stocks that you're looking at kind of as a play on this. So let me know in the comments down below. We also have the Telegram group linked down below in the description, Twitter and Instagram at investglobal_IO. Beyond that, we have the website up and running. It's kind of the rough draft version, investglobal.io. So yeah, we'll be doing a lot of things moving forward. I'm actually heading from Venice, Italy today to Rome, taking a train, so that'll be interesting. I just wanted to get this video out here because I thought it was very interesting. Again, go check out that first video if you're curious on some of my other thoughts around this. But that's all for this one. If you enjoyed it, like, subscribe, button all, invest global, and until next time.